Hey guys, how you going? I did this video with Adam Gilchrist a few months ago. It was awesome. He's one of my favorite cricketers of all time. He talked about some really cool stuff, both cricket related and off the field. Worth a listen. I'll try to put it in chapters for you guys so you can pick and choose if you really want, but in my view, it's worth listening to the whole thing. He is a legend of the game and provides some great insight. So I hope you enjoy. Adam Craig Gilchrist, mate. How you going? Thank you for being on the show.
I'm going very well, thanks, Uz. Pleasure to join you. And yeah, we're going pretty well. I'm still over in sunny Perth. We've had a relatively normal lifestyle for quite some time due to our hard border, so we've enjoyed that aspect of it, notwithstanding everything else that's been going on all around Australia and all around the world. But no, going very well, thanks, mate.
Just in full disclosure, for yourself, I don't know if I ever told you, but definitely on listeners, ever since I was young till about the age of 12, it was all for me. It was all Brian Charles Lara, another lefty. I loved him. I had a Lara 501 bat.
Yeah.
He was my hero. And then from about 12 onwards, from high school onwards, my absolute hero and idol was you. Like, I did everything. I had all the Puma stuff, from the shoes to the pads to the gloves. I had the Puma Classic bat with the three Pumas at the back. I still remember it to this day. I had a yellow canary helmet because I used to watch you in the one days all the time. There's no other person I love like more than Adam Gilchrist. And even to this day, in my back, if you ever watched the number on my back for Queensland and the Thunder is number 18. That's because of you. So I'm not sure if I ever told you this, mate. It's an absolute honor. It's an honor for me. If you ask my best mate, if you ask my best mate Ardil, who I went all school with, he was Mark Wall and I was Adam Gilchrist. And to the point where I used to watch you bat for one day or whatever it was. And if you got out early, I would literally be depressed for the next 15 minutes. My brother would just be like, "It's all right, buddy. It's all right." Next game, I'm like, "Yeah."
You had a very depressing childhood, I reckon, on a number of occasions.
No, I had plenty of good times, mate. So full disclosure, this is an absolute honor for me, mate. So thank you for being
very
on the show.
kind. That's no, you haven't told me that before, and it's a funny one. It was like, I mean, you'd have had little kids or parents of little kids expressing that same sort of sentiment to you, no doubt, about how much they love following you and watching you, and the way that they appreciate what you do and give back the game. And I don't know. It's a really it's you never expect that that's going to be said to you ever, do you? You don't ever sort of grow up going, "Oh, that's why I play the game. I want that sort of acknowledgement." But then now, and I've known you for a number of years, and you've carved your own fantastic career. It's even more sort of interesting and unique when it's coming from someone who's carved it out and reached the same heights that I got to. So I appreciate it, mate. Very nice. Yeah. Very nice.
You never know when the inspiration's coming, do you? So Adam Gilchrist to even know my name, I'm pretty pumped about that as a kid.
Actually, just so now you've mentioned that, and your mate was Mark Waugh. So what is your mate Adil? Was it? You said his name?
Yeah.
So what's the deal when you're giving Junior shit back to him in commentary? Because that is TV gold. I mean, I thought it was good that we as fellow commentators can dump shit on Mark Waugh, but when it's coming from the player on the field back up there, that's outstanding. Does Adil get annoyed at that?
No, I think look, with all due respect to Junior, he's actually been one guy who's always supported me on the field and off. He's always been great. So I think we've had the relationship where I can go back at him and he knows it does not personal, because I've actually always really liked his support. So I think it makes it easier that way. I mean, probably couldn't do it to someone who I didn't get along with as well. So, I think me and Ardil are good.
Very good.
Just moving on from that I'm going to go right into your test career, because growing up, I remember your test career, you, for most of it, averaging close to 60, which is unbelievable. Back end dropped off a little bit, but you were still averaging. You finished your career close to 50. Honestly, did you ruin keeping for everyone else? That is unbelievable.
No, the white ball, one-day cricket changed keeping. That's my genuine belief. I mean, once you start restricting the amount of deliveries that a team can receive in a batting sense, obviously everyone becomes with a much higher premium, and everyone's got to chip in. So even bowlers started to have to realise they had to be able to hold the bat a bit to contribute to a limited overs game. Clearly, Test cricket is the same in its basic format as what it's ever been, by way of 5 days and bat as long as you want and so on. So, one-day cricket had an effect on that too, and scoring rates, and now T20 cricket. But it's nice for the ego for people to say you ruined it, you changed it.
Though. You can strike at 80 or 70, whatever you might have in Test match cricket. Strike at a very high strike rate, but you still got to score the runs, which always isn't easy with different conditions. Wearing wickets. Where in one day the wickets are usually better. There's a lot of factors that come into it. That's where I'm sort of getting at.
Yeah. No, you're right. And as you know, there's so many different circumstances and scenarios that you can walk to the wicket in Test match cricket, no matter where you bat. It might be batting at 3, it might be 1 for 300, it might be 1 for none off the first ball. So, and same every batting position. It's so variable. I just love batting. I love wicket keeping. Didn't consider one. I put more value on my wicket keeping because you're the only one in the team, and I trained harder for my wicket keeping. I found that didn't come quite as naturally as my batting, but I never sat back to really think about one having more a higher priority in my mind, or that I had to change. I had to make the statement with the bat for any other. You just playing the game, mate. Just play all through the junior level as best you can and have as much fun as you can, and all of a sudden you find yourselves in those situations. But that was my approach. Always very attacking player. And to your detriment at times, but also it's great when it comes off. But I think that's the main thing. And it was probably, you mentioned that average dropped off a bit by the end. It was probably only right at the back end of my career where I really started to second guess myself and doubt myself a bit and try to restrain that positivity, which is a shame. And that's probably where I lost about 10 runs off that average. But believe me, you'll realise once you finish, the average, and it doesn't really through your career, but the average truly does not rank anywhere in the list of 1 to 1,000 of experiences and memories.
Yeah, I say that to the young guys too. They look like sitting worried. I'm like, mate, no one will give a crap about your average when you retire. They won't give a shit. They'll remember what you were like as a bloke. They'll remember how you played the game.
Totally.
And that leads me perfectly into my next point. You probably were known for one thing more than anyone was known for anything else. It's funny how you play the game, the way you scored, the way you batted, but you were known as the walker. Where did this start? Because the game must be easy for you if you're walking, because I'm nicking, I'm waiting for the umpy. He's got to get me out. I'm not walking here. This game's tough enough as it is.
Yeah, no, that's certainly not the case. I still had my struggles. I think, well, I'll tell you, you went through the academy and all the underage programs and everything, and I was at the cricket academy. I didn't wake up one day and think, right, I've got to make a statement. I've got this agenda item that I need to lead. It didn't ever evolve like that. But I do remember being in the cricket academy, 1991. Rod Marsh, head coach, my childhood idol. So literally living the dream. And we were going around all the states as a team, the academy team, playing against the second 11s of all the states. And this particular game was down at Manuka Oval against the ACT, their sort of first pick 11, I guess. So, and as you know, that the ACT team was typically made up of a bunch of old blokes who tried to go to Sydney and given it their crack and might have played some shield cricket, might have played 10 years of first grade and then find themselves back in the ACT, and a whole bunch of talented youngsters coming through. And there wasn't much middle ground in there. It was the old fellas who had the experience and the young whippersnappers coming up. I was batting, absolute road, Manuka Oval, and an old leggy who'd been to Sydney for years and then came back. I say old, he was probably about 35, but I was sort of 18 and thought he was about 85. But he bowled a ball, went back, cut it, massive edge, given not out, and I was just standing there. I think I was just standing there like through disappointment, like, oh, can't believe that's happened. And then got given not out, and the moment had gone and I'm still there. And, right, okay, so I go on and I scored 100 and we're in the change rooms and Bushy, the old leggy, came in and he said, well played, Gilly, well played, mate. And I went, oh, mate, I just felt so guilty. It was so obvious. I said, mate, I'm so sorry about that one out there. And he goes, oh, no, don't worry about it. He goes, it means more to you, obviously, than it does to me. And I don't think he was having a crack at me, but that was like an arrow in my heart. I thought, oh, at what cost? Like 100 at what cost? That bloke's opinion of me. And I probably overthought it. I probably get a little bit emotionally, think a little bit emotionally about, and also about what perception people have of me, probably through the journey a little bit. But it didn't sit well with me at all. And I think that's probably where a seed was planted, that from then on, I probably don't want to be in that awkward, uncomfortable situation again. I don't remember saying this is the way I'm going to play, but I think that might be on reflection where it was in the back of my mind. Fast track it to sort of 2002-03 summer. We had an Ashes series, and it was just through that period of time was when they first started sort of going upstairs for the, whether a catch is carried or not. So they were just bringing in that sort of technology. It wasn't up to speed. Blokes on both our team, opposition teams, were smashing it to cover, getting caught, that far off the ground.
Yeah.
Stand their ground, make them send it upstairs, benefit of the doubt.
Still do it. Yep.
Yeah, well, but technology now is much improved, so there's not as much. But anyway, things like that. As you know, we as cricketers are brilliant whingers, and we're brilliant at laying blame, apportioning blame for a loss to someone or something else, and particularly the umpire. We'll criticise an umpire till we're blue in the face about a costly decision that cost us a game. But when we get one that goes your way and you win the game, you don't walk up and say, "Thanks, buddy, that was a shocking decision."
You don't even remember him. You forget about him. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. They're pushed aside. So all that stuff, we whinge about umpires. I guess through that summer there seemed to be about 3 or 4, and I was just sort of thinking we got to be better than this as players. Just taking a bit of accountability and trying to help the umpires out, maybe. I don't know. That was floating around my mind, and then in that World Cup semi, I found myself in that awkward situation again.
I remember I was watching it.
Smashed it. Biggest noise ever.
He was not giving you out.
And Big Rudy, Rudy's always been a good ally of mine. And with Rudy, it's the long, slow death as the finger comes up. But he's just shaking his head, and I don't think I had a flashback to that game at Manuka Oval, but it felt bloody awkward, and something in my mind just said, "Go, you got to go." So I just turned and walked, and then I think the footnote to it, there's a lot more people that do walk in cricket. That just happened to be a World Cup semi-final where the cricketing world's focus was on that one match because there was nothing else in cricket going on. So, and I think people can accept, and I can accept, people don't walk, and that's fine. That seems to be one of the unique things of cricket that, although it's sort of, well, I guess I don't know if it is technically against the rules. The rules say just accept the umpire's decision. So that's why people can handle non-walkers. The only one we don't like, all of us, as you know, is a selective walker. You either do or you don't, and that's it.
It's hard to get away with it now in international cricket anyway because of DRS. It's so hard to get away with.
But that's a funny one, mate, because I obviously didn't play through the DRS, and I thought when that came in, as far as the reviews of appeals and so on, when that came in, I thought that is just everyone's going to walk now. Like there's no use hanging around because it's going to show up. But it hasn't seen that happen, has it? There's still elements of doubt
here it is. Here is it as a batsman. So if you nick one and you wait and it's given not out and the team is not 100% sure and they don't want to use the referral,
the onus is on them.
They might not use this, so you might get away with this still. Okay. So that's why people – I remember I had one. I reverse swept one against Maharaj in South Africa a couple of years ago. Came off my glove, went straight up, caught, appealed, given not out. I'm obviously not as good of a bloke as you, Gilly. I knew it came off my glove, and I was like, that is so out. Please don't refer it. Please, that's what I'm saying in my head. Please don't refer it. Please don't refer it. I looked at Faf and I was like, I'm trying to play really cool. Like, I'm looking at my arm or something. I don't know what I was doing. And Faf was just sort of right at the last minute, he referred it. And as soon as he did that, like referred it, the dagger in my heart, I'm like, literally 1 second away from not being out. And as soon as he did that, that was when I felt kind of embarrassed. I'm like, well, do I just walk here? Because like, I know I'm 100% out. Like I know when I'm out. Most times I know when I'm out. Even when I nick nick, you give a not out. I'll never say I'm not out. I'll say, yeah, I nicked it. But
Yeah.
this time it was like, this is embarrassing because I can't remember who was the other end. Might have been Davey, but I'm just like, I'm just going to walk. And Dave's like, no, stay. I'm like, nah. So I was like sort of like turning around, and it literally, as I was turning around, the video came up, and it was like, I was like, yeah, I'm not getting away with this one. So it is time where you look like an absolute idiot, where you're like, you knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
So there is that element. That's why players these days don't really.
Yeah, I get it.
For that reason.
Having not been in the change rooms or in that scenario with it, I totally get that now, that if it is given not out, again, all you're doing is waiting for the umpire's decision. And and everyone's quite within their rights to do that. So it's an interesting discussion. So
was it a tough change room walking back in? Because I can imagine some of the guys would have been like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah.
It would have been a pretty tough change. I mean, it takes a strong personality to actually walk into a change room, back into that change room, and hold strong to what you did. So I'd love to know what it was like.
Yeah, it's one of the most often asked questions. What did your teammates say when you walked in that World Cup semi? And I said, well, it's not what they did say; it's what they didn't say. it was, and that little viewing room at Port Elizabeth. It sits out. It's pretty, and the opposition are sort of right next to you and down the front viewing area there. But anyway, I walked in behind the glass there, sat down, and I thought, Jesus, and it was silent. As you know, and pretty much anyone at most levels of cricket, when someone's been dismissed, there's an element of respectful quiet. And then after a natural flow of time, there's a little bit of murmuring chat, and someone might hit a 4 and, you're right, we're off and going again now. We've given him his time to grieve, and now we just got to get on with it. And usually the batsman who's got out has got over the emotion of getting out. But it was just silence. And it just kept going, silence. No one said anything. And I remember sitting there thinking, Jesus, of all the days to get this big conscience rush. And but I thought, I'll be fine. Punter's walked in there. We're home. We'll be fine. He'll build it. And then he got out, and he comes in and sits straight down next to me. And he looks at me. He goes, didn't you see the umpire give you not out? And I went, yeah. And that was wrong answer. It just went silent again, complete silent again. And that was pretty much it, really. No one really mentioned it until in the rooms after the game, where we'd finally won. And I think Simo started throwing around about, oh, no worries, mate, great time to grow a conscience. Yeah, good work, mate. No one.
Big Roy.
Yeah, Punter really let it well. I mean, clearly Punter's not a walker, as hard as it gets in the way he plays. But he was asked a lot through that period of time in the press, even about his approach and will he advise me to or not to. And just simply said, play it however he wants to play it. I'm not a walker. There are plenty that aren't, whatever, and didn't put pressure on me or any expectations to change the way I played.
Perfect. The next game, 100, was the final? That was the final?
That was so the final. No, I didn't get 100 in the final. Punter got a big 160. I failed.
That was an unbelievable innings. Yeah, I remember Punter's innings. He was charging him, hitting him bull ring, wasn't it?
Yeah, bull ring. And Marto was out with a broken thumb, came in for the final and got 80 with Punter as well. That was, pretty extraordinary batting.
Yeah, great World Cup to be an Australian supporter.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in talking about the mental side of the game too, just in life and in cricket in general. And you always felt like from the outside that you held yourself together really well. You always seemed really composed, but I know how hard the game is, and I know the ups and downs of cricket, and I know that's not the case. No matter what you're looking like at the outside, I know people go, especially cricketers, being a 5-day game, you ebb and flow through different emotions and whatnot. So I guess my question to you is, did there any mental, big mental battles that you remember during your career? And if so, how'd you react? How'd you face them? How'd you overcome them?
Yeah. Oh, mate, you're spot on about the roller coaster of a ride. And, the late Peter Roebuck, who I thought was a beautiful writer on cricket, he was outstanding. And he wrote a line relatively early in my career, and it wasn't about me, it was about cricketers. And he said, cricketers need to wear a cape of bravado around them that can conceal everything underneath so no one else can see it, be it opponents or even media or crowd. You've just got to have this sort of ability to conceal all that and put on your best sort of game face. And I could really relate to that. A lot of people commented to me when I did my autobiography, when I finished, about how stunned they were at the amount of self-doubt I had, which was a contradiction to maybe the image that I portrayed out there and the way I walked out to bat and tried to look really positive and, always energetic. And obviously my batting style was very positive. So, yeah, a lot of people mentioned that as a byproduct of reading my book about how much they were surprised that I did have the sort of little discussions going on in my head and the little demons occasionally. And probably, like what I said about the last 18 months to 2 years of my career or the last 10 runs of my batting average just disintegrating, that's where self-doubt crept in. Pretty much 2005, the Ashes tour over there, that was where I had my greatest struggle mentally and dealing with the getting the balance right. I think up until that point, I'd managed, the high and the low and everything in a nice, pretty equal sort of mindset. But all of a sudden I was under siege. It felt like I was under siege for the first time from an opponent that had a plan and were executing that plan to perfection. And I just didn't know where to go. And I couldn't get out of that rut. We were in England for a big, it was the most anticipated series for a long time. And Mel, and we had 2 kids at the time, Mel, my wife, and we only had 2 kids at the time, but they came over pretty much for the whole series. And I just made a few poor choices. I tried to hedge my bets by putting them in some self-contained units near the hotel because, as you know, the hotel room's pretty small and not great for a family to spend, a month or 6 weeks in. But so I was sort of half in the hotel, half ducking off to them. But basically I was trying to be a batsman, a wicketkeeper, a vice captain, a husband and a father, and I was doing a pretty crap job at all of them. And I wasn't allowing myself time just to sit back and assess what's going on once England started to execute this plan that, whether it was clearly well thought out or they stumbled across it, but they jumped on it and it was working. So that's where I started to really second guess myself. That's where, to the point it was where I remember I dropped Varney. We were at Old Trafford and Dizzy bowled Michael Vaughan off a no ball, and I reckon the next ball he slashed at it, and I dived in front of Varney and dropped it. So it's effectively 2 chances and 2 balls, and then Varney got 170 or 180 or something, and
beautifully.
Got off the bus at the team hotel. All the boys walk in. I skulk off round the side to go to this little self-contained apartment where Mel and the kids were. Walk past this big row of bars and restaurants, and I was getting hammered by these. All the boozers are in there drinking, and I've got the Aussie kid on, trying to just get to the hotel undercover. Nice keeping, Gilly. Yeah, good luck. Go. And anyway, I got into the hotel room, and Mel had washing some dishes and cut a hand. So I've got to find a doctor to get that stitched. But it was just the worst day of the worst test match of my career, of the greatest battling tour that I had. But I started to think, shit, on that walk, have I fluked it to this point? Have I, stupid, ridiculous thoughts, but have I just got away with it? Have I, ridden my luck far enough, and now it's going to dry up and I'm going to be exposed as a bit of a fraud? Like, it's just a horrible mental battle that you can't explain. You explain it to someone and like you and right, so they laugh and you go, and they go, come on, mate. But I was just absolutely trapped. So that was where it got as bad as it got for me. But prior to that and coming out of that, I managed to get out of that, I guess, with that innings here against England in the Ashes in 06-07 where, I edged one through a vacant gully region that I could have been out first ball, but for some reason there wasn't a gully there. And then
Is this the Perth innings?
Yeah. So I sort of, I jumped around a bit there, but
Yeah.
from '05 to that Perth innings,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the game had me a little bit. You know, it had me strangled, and I couldn't break free of it.
Just talk about like that. You couldn't break free with it. Was it your mind? Did you feel like your mind was clouded, that you wasn't as clear as you were before when you were succeeding to where you were at that point? What was it that was
Yeah.
really
Well, again, I
screwing you
think it
up?
was just that little bit of self-doubt. I didn't do a lot of self-analysis along the way. I wasn't overly technical about my preparation or even analysis. I didn't watch innings back much. I didn't get too technical with looking at opponents because I almost didn't like studying an opponent because of almost superstition. I didn't want to get spooked by what I could see. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to look at
Go
Murali
in there with
running
a
in spinning at
go
that.
in there with a clear mind. Just watch the
Yeah,
ball and sort of hit it kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
The old sort of
Yeah.
rugby term, play what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Deal with whatever they turn up with on the day. Whereas if I was sort of analysing it and trying to get to sleep, thinking about what might be the next day, that wasn't me. But and I didn't do that up until that '05. But then on reflection, I probably should have started to self-reflect a bit earlier in that '05 and tried to make adjustments. But I was just caught. I think I was just in no man's land. And I think also it was a bit of an oddity because I was so experienced and so far into my career that I found myself in that position. It was almost like
Yeah.
typically players, not everyone, but the vast majority of players will break into a new level of cricket, have some success, but then go through that trough and may either get dropped or go away or find a way to get through it and then start to peak again. That's sort of most players go on that journey. But I'd sort of in that test career been able just to sort of maintain a nice standard and fly under the radar a little bit by way of failure because the big innings would come and help it out and conceal that. But this run, I was just caught in a rut. So, yeah, I think primarily self-doubt, uncertainty if what I was doing was still right and still okay. Had I not lost it, but had I peaked and was I going down the other side skill-wise, still pretty young, but yeah, just a lot of swirling around in the mind, trying to work out what was right. And then the breakout innings was the one in Perth, which was not my best innings ever, but it was my most fun. And I was the beneficiary of a 40-degree day, and Pup and Huss had already belted hundreds, but and we had a big
Very
lead.
modest.
But that was the day that reminded me of what you play the game for. It's going back to just hitting the ball and play what's in front of you. Don't overthink it.
That's amazing to get all the way around, all the way back to there. After you got that innings, did you feel like a weight had been lifted off your
Oh,
shoulders? Did you feel like yourself again?
yeah, totally. I mean, if you look at my reaction when I brought up that 100, I sort of looked up and just screamed, and it was a complete realization of, hang on, it's almost back to kids cricket or backyard or school cricket. That first time you just feel that ball fly out of the middle of the bat. It was pure joy at just batting and feeling the results of what you're hoping to feel.
Did you find it hard to separate the cricket? Because you're obviously a family man. You got 4 kids at the time. You said you might have had 2 kids
Two
at
two
around
in
that time?
'05, yeah.
205, yeah. Did you find it tough to separate the two, or were they something that you did really easily? How'd you balance both, not bringing your work home all the time?
Yeah,
Because it's quite important.
that majorly important. It's a really interesting question. On reflection, I think from the moment we had our first child, Harry, 2001, I reckon that was the almost sounds dramatic, the beginning of the end of my career, if that makes sense. Like just, and it's a cliche, but the little priorities start to what wasn't in your life before becomes a priority, and so that's going to compromise some of the other things in your life to an extent. Up until '05 was probably where I first started to really address that side of it. I've been able to manage it, but when I ended up retiring somewhat suddenly, I dropped a catch in 2008, January 24th. Don't worry, don't never forget that. But I realised that all those other things in my life had started to outweigh and supersede the priority of 100% cricket. And I knew straight away that was time to finish when that 100% to cricket was really compromised badly. I didn't hate the game. I wasn't sick of it. I still loved it and was enjoying it, but I just knew. So, yeah, the barometer for me was after, not so much through 2005, but the next 12 months or so. We went and toured South Africa. I didn't, sort of found some challenges here and there, but I had a few innings here and there that were okay, but not consistently. I wasn't finding that consistent sort of fulfillment of joy from doing it all. But what I remember my wife Mel saying to me prior to 2005, she wouldn't know if she hadn't watched or seen the day's play, if she'd been out doing something. She wouldn't know when I got home what we'd done that day or how I'd gone. She wouldn't know whether we'd batted or bowled or whether I'd scored 100 or got a duck or whatever.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
good thing. Yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah.
After 05, I found my results were reflecting. My results were having an effect on my mood. Definitely.
Right.
And that was never a comfortable feeling either. I sort of could feel that simmering away, and you wrestle it and go, no, that's not what it's about. Go out and have fun. But when people tell you to do something, or even when you try to tell yourself, it's got to happen organically and evolve, doesn't it? It's got to come from truly within, without necessarily acknowledgement.
Easier said than done. You can tell yourself whatever you want, but
absolutely,
it doesn't work that way.
Totally. So it just comes through in yourself.
I talked in a previous podcast with Lloydie, who was a Aussie psychologist, and I said every time I've gone out there, said to myself, "I'm going to score 100 today." I've never scored 100 saying that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't worried about, like, I wasn't thinking about actually watching the ball and going through the processes and doing everything else. My mind was totally somewhere else.
No, absolutely. And then you go the other way and go, right, just over the top, saying don't worry about anything, just get to 10 runs, or break it. And anyway, you're focusing so hard on whatever that is, you're just forgetting to allow everything to go naturally and trust your training and the results of that training. But the balancing, that's imperative, isn't it? And I was always had eyes wide open off the field about opportunity, about relationships. If you had a sponsor, trying to build the relationship more than just a brand endorsement, try to get in and learn who they are and what their business is, and sort of build a friendship with them. And so that I always enjoyed that. But again, by the end of it, you're starting to work out, is that becoming more of a priority than being at training and staying that extra bit where you want to and need to. That was the thing about training too. A lot of people, a lot of the great players train longer and harder. And I don't think it's because they sit back and go, I need to do that training. It's just they want to, don't they? Yes, I mean, you
enjoy it.
You'd happily bat for hours in the nest because you just enjoy batting. But the moment you start going, I've got to work on that and that and that, it can become a bit of a chore. But
absolutely.
So I found I was probably just starting to cut training a bit short, not because I hated it, but the family were in town, or there's a movie, we want to take the kids to the movies, or there's a sponsors gig on, and I like those guys. I want to give them a bit more than what they expect. And so it is a challenging balance, but I think as long as players are aware of that and have sound people around them to help them keep that balance, that's probably ideal.
You mentioned you can sort of call it the business side of it, the sponsorships and whatnot. And he always struck me as a guy who was, obviously he had a really good image, and I'm sure everyone wanted to work with Adam Gilchrist because you're an excellent batsman, had a great image. I remember one thing from when you were batting, the bat sticker. Was it the Castrol that you had on the back all the time? Were you one of the first people to have a bat sticker on the back of your bat that had sponsorship?
Yeah, that was that was a new sort of commercial breakthrough for cricket, being allowed to have.
Did you think about that as someone? How do you get? Because no one else ever even thought about doing something like that.
Yeah, there'd been a bit of a push through that period of time from players, or I can't remember if it was a players' association, but just trying to free up a little bit more commercial opportunity for players. And as you know, there's some big, important sponsors of say Cricket Australia, by way of example, that do need to have certain protections around what players then go on and endorse. And you don't want too much conflict or competing endorsement if a company's putting a big amount of money to cricket in general. But little sort of pieces, I guess, of real estate on you like that. It was a good opportunity, I think, that sprung up. But yeah, I was always pretty trying to get creative in that regard and try to capitalise on those opportunities without going around outside the boundaries. But as soon as that sort of ruling came in that you could have it, Travelex Foreign Exchange, who I was been long associated with and actually sat on there as a non-exec director in Australasia on their board, they were the first company to be on the back of my bat. And then that was for about 12 months. And then Castrol came on board and stayed on there all the way through. So, yeah, that stuff, that commercial opportunity always interested me. And like, as I say, if I was endorsing a brand or a company or a product, I tried to give them more than just, holding a product, go and buy that. I tried to learn a bit more about it and get involved and do all I could to even internally. I mean, use the example of Castrol. I think some of the greatest experiences I had through my career was being involved with them, but on internal stuff, on conferences and getting to know so many people within that business. And clearly they got a fair bit of joy out of being able to be in and around international cricket in whatever capacity it was, but just trying to help them. And, even if that helped them move even more broadly from a relationship with me, but into the game, which Castrol came on as an ICC sponsor, that's got to be good for the whole sort of ecosystem of cricket. So just try and give more than what they expect.
Yeah. Good. You mentioned.
Sorry, I just had a memory there when you mentioned about that Castrol sticker. The day, thinking out loud now, the day that I launched or had my first innings with a Castrol sticker on, when it changed over from Travelex to Castrol, had all the Castrol boys in Perth at the Wacker in a corporate box. This is this new relationship. This is great. And I scored 100, and I thought, can't get any better than that. It's going to be plastered at least on the front page of the West Australian. I'm going to, as we do now, turn the bat around rather than raise the bat the way
that's what you used to do all the time.
Yeah, we turn it around, show their logo. And I thought that's going to be plastered on all the front pages of all the papers. What exposure. What a way to consummate the marriage. And it just so happened Haydos got 380. So I didn't get a mention. Did not get a mention. The forgotten 100, mate. Yeah.
Don't worry, man. You got plenty. If I can remember the Castrol, I'm sure everyone else remembers it too. So it worked. I used to do that. Actually, I used to put my bat up backwards. I had no bat sticker, obviously, when I was younger, but you used to do it. I remember I used to put my bat backwards too. So it was catching on. It became a thing.
Yeah.
It became a thing.
It's in now.
Just after that, when we talked about, I'll come back to the IPL. I mean, you finished your Test career up, and then you went into IPL. And at the start, it just looked, obviously India was the start of India becoming a powerhouse in terms of cricket, in terms of that tournament, T20 tournament. Yeah. What was it like initially there? Because it kind of seemed like it was in the mix of something really massive and something still pretty loose. It still seemed like it was pretty raw at the time.
Mate. It was loose. You're spot on. Massive and loose, casual in elements, very professional in other elements. It was such a unique time, and I think perhaps in time, I think T20 cricket, but certainly these leagues, these domestic leagues that start and are part of the landscape now, I think the effect that they have on cricket will be remembered as much as World Series cricket. And there'll be times when, maybe it's 10 or 15 years where we're doing docos or interviews about reflecting on the impact that the IPL in particular had. We didn't know, the auction none of us had ever been, we didn't know what was going to happen there. And I remember being out fielding training at the MCG must have been March 2008, but we're out in the middle of a fielding session when the auction was going on, and someone running out going, Simo, you've just gone for 1.1 million or something like that. And all the boys run to highballs going, what?
Roy was thinking about all the fishing rods you could get, I reckon.
we had no idea. I remember getting told by Lalit Modi, the big mastermind, but supposedly behind it all, certainly the big salesman of it at the time. Oh, you might get 300 or 400 grand for 6 weeks cricket, 2020 cricket. And I was like, whoa, like that's, and then the rest is history with what happened once an auction starts and a few egos get involved with multi-billionaire owners. But once the teams were settled, I remember going there just thinking, we didn't know whether it was going to be serious or just party time, Mickey Mouse cricket, no one cares, almost like, a Barbarians rugby match where they just throw them together and put on a bit of a show, a bit of Harlem Globetrotter style, and then everyone just has a big party. Well, I think we saw from what Brendan McCullum did in the opening innings ever of IPL, that innings, 154 or whatever, I mean, he should be set and forget. The IPL should be paying him a retainer every year, forever and a day. That's what a way to launch. But that, and then in the second innings of that game, when Bangalore were batting, seeing our old mate Sourav Ganguly and our even greater mate Ricky Ponting jumping and rejoicing, cuddling, celebrating a wicket. That was just off the charts, wasn't it? Just unbelievable.
Well, this was after, as you were involved in, this was after the whole Monkey Gate stuff too.
3 months after, the worst experience of our cricketing lives. It was, that was horrible, that series. But, it's amazing how it all got forgotten. And, and then, so that's the serious part, very serious cricket, and then loose the parties. Like that was, it took a few years, I reckon, before the IPL as an organisation and all the owners and that sort of realised that, hang on, this is big business, and there is a commercial attraction, but we don't need to let them get that wild, or to the point where owners forced you to go to the parties afterwards, just because they wanted to be seen to have their players there, and it's all about.
It's definitely tightened up.
Yeah,
the parties aren't really there anymore. They're pretty much gone out of it. There's obviously a lot of stuff with ICC, making sure that anti-corruption and all sorts of things. They're just trying to stamp down. And it's become that type of tournament. It's world class. It's the biggest T20 tournament in the world. Most money.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a matter of time. But it was interesting you said that, because obviously, mate, we've both been involved in gates. You were Monkey Gate. I was Homework Gate. We're gate buddies. Don't worry. So it's interesting you say that, because it was a pretty tough time for everyone involved in Australian cricket. And then you get involved in a team where you have to play with each other and play, amongst your teammates, like Gary Ganguly with Ponting. It kind of breaks down the barriers and makes you realise at the end of the day that everyone, most of these guys, everyone, are good blokes, and you play in the same team, you end up getting along, because it never happened before. Imagine 20 years ago, even 5 years before that, saying that you're going to be playing in the same team as, whoever, like, from South Africa or from England, playing with a pom and embracing a pom. It's just a weird notion. It's not weird anymore, but it was back then.
It was such an exciting time. And I think we knew, or a lot of us, if you stop to think about it, you knew it was a unique time that was probably pioneering a new take on the game, a new sort of era of how the game is approached and looked at. And I'm sure that there's many, many varied experiences that have come out of the IPL, but it gave me as much fulfillment from the exact point that you make about playing alongside, at times, 4 or 5 different nationalities in one team. Playing alongside, you're allowed 4 overseas players, so you've clearly got 7 Indian players there. Within that 7, you had different ranges of experience from, VVS Laxman and Rohit Sharma down to a 19-year-old from a village outside of Rajasthan, outside of Jaipur, who got called into your squad, who'd never played in front of 20 people. and he's charging in with a ball, and you're trying to talk to him, and he doesn't even speak the same language as VPS. So it's just a cultural melting pot, but such a fulfilling feeling to help try and just try and bring it all together. I think initially it was you're trying to have an impact on. I think you paid a lot of lip service to this whole cultural exchange early. Certainly, in my experience in Hyderabad, where we were, year one, we had Pakistan, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Australia, and India. We had 6 nationalities in our team. And we all thought, this is going to be a great cultural exchange, but we just didn't really give it the attention that it really warranted. And we came dead last. We were a rabble. We were all over the shop. And so before the second season, we made sure that we had literally had a cultural appreciation day where we had a facilitator come in, and we had a day of just get out, that old school, get up in front of your peers, talk about where you're from, what your parents did, got siblings, what are your interests, what's offensive to you. Okay, that's not so offensive in our culture, but thanks for letting us know. And spewed it all out. And, as I say, like a 19-year-old Indian kid standing up in front of all these people, simple things like that, simple things like in team meetings, asking their opinion because they've never been asked it before. Whether you took it on board or not didn't matter, but you just ask them at least, get the buy-in. And then that allowed us to sort of forge our own Deccan Chargers environment or culture, if you like. Well, certainly we didn't get the whiteboard out and write our culture. They're things, again, they've just got to be eventuate organically. I don't think you can manufacture a culture. It's just got to happen from the behaviours and the contributions, particularly of the leadership group. So that's how that changed. But, as fulfilling. And we went on, we were successful in that next year, and that gave me as much joy from a human-to-human experience that I had on par with anything through the rest of my career. It's not denigrating the Australian teams that I played in and what we achieved, but it was certainly on par with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from my point of view, I mean, now there's been no secrets in cricket, but now there's even less because everyone's playing with each other and you're kind of learning from each other and talking about cricket with each other. And I think, in my personal opinion, that the game has developed a lot from that. Guys have learned how to play overseas, especially in white ball cricket when you're playing T20 stuff in different conditions, there's just no secrets anymore. I think it's been great for the game and getting that information out. And getting the information from, an Indian great or a South African great, and then bringing it back, and them doing vice versa. I think it's actually developed a lot, especially in the white ball game, because of this.
I'm wondering on that. How has it affected? I mean, as you say, it's great that you get to know other players from overseas better. But is there much? I mean, what is someone? Sometimes too much information can be dangerous. So whether they, bring it back, and not so much from a technical point of view, but almost, someone in the Aussie team says to you, "Oh, you played alongside so and so from India. He looks like, what sort of bloke is he?" And if you say, "Oh, no, he's not a great bloke" or whatever, that's then more fuel that you can add onto a fire in a fiery confrontation in an international match. I thought I saw for a few years there. It almost inflamed situations in international cricket. It wasn't the sort of UN result that everyone sort of thought it might be.
It might have been because you actually get to know the people really well. And when you play against someone, so when you play against an opposition player and you don't play on the same team against him, you only really know what he's like on the field.
Absolutely.
But when you play with them, you learn what they're actually like off the field, the type of what makes them tick, the type of guys they are, how to get under their skin. You actually do learn these things. And it's a really good point you bring up, because you do find out certain things about someone you didn't like. I've played with guys I thought absolutely crazy. This guy's crazy, and then you play in the team alongside them. You're like, actually, he's not crazy. It's it's all bravado. It's all fake, and you realize it only after you play with them. You're like, I can use this because now I know that this bravado is all fake. Like it's huff and puff. Like you're actually right. So it might have instigated a lot of, it might have instigated a lot because you learn about people personally, and the last thing you want to do is have personal attacks. And I've talked about this with a lot of people before, that even in the Australian team coming up before, everything that happened towards South Africa, we used to put your team, the punter, Gilchrist, Hayden, Langer, McGrath, Warren, Gillespie.
Yeah.
I could go on and on. That was the team to live up to. That was the Australian team that everyone from that point, everyone aspires for that, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
But the thing was, we put you guys on such a pedestal, not in terms of, what you achieved on the field was unbelievable, but how you played the game. And whenever I was in the Australian setup, it was all about, guys, back then we played hard, we got in people's faces, we did this, we didn't, we did all this stuff. And I was like, that's not really how I remember it. But I guess, if I'm hearing from these guys, and then funnily enough, JL came back into, the fold. And I was talking to him about it because he was obviously one of the big values is humility.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I feel like us in the last 3 years, the stuff we've done on the field, just it's to me like I feel like we're just going a bit too far at times, and I feel like is this what happened? How'd you go about it? It's like, no, mate, we played hard. Yes, there was a bit of so and so on the field, but it was the humility was always there at some level. The Australian cricket team. And then I was watching a game, a replay was raining at the SCG one day.
Yeah.
I think Sachin got 100, and literally everyone from the Australian team, that great Australian team, came up and shook his hand, and I was like, whoa. I was like, JL, no word of a lie. If we were shaking opposition's hands a couple of years ago, it was seen as weak. It was seen we shouldn't be shaking anyone's hand on the field. Like, it's not a thing to do. But here it is, these guys who we're trying to live up to. That's humility to a T. And I know you did that every time someone got 100, you went straight up to him and shook his hand. That's what I remembered.
Yeah.
So it was just great to actually see that. But it's amazing how the legend just went from one thing to an absolute
spirals out of control, doesn't it? Yeah. You need sort of quality control checks occasionally on stories and what history, the perception of history, rather than just going and as you say, you fortunately saw a bit of footage to give you more of a reality than perception. But I think that's even that you're not going to please everyone. Simple as that. We all know that. And even the critics of, say, punter will say that that Sydney Test in the monkey gate, certain appeals or whatever, but it never paints the full picture. And punter was as hard as anyone and as aggressive and cut from tough, cloth down there and playing first grade when he was 14 and all that. But he did have humility, and I remember we were about to go out and regain the Ashes in 2006 at the Wacker. We only needed one wicket after lunch. They needed 300 or whatever, and he sort of got us. It was after we lost in 2005, so this was the big redemption, and he just got us in and just said, guys, all I want to see out here is just respect. Let's be respectful here. Just don't carry on. We've worked hard to get this back. And, just a little snapshot there. The critics will say, what about this time or that time? It's an emotional game. But as a general rule, I can really relate to what you're saying about that period of your guys and up to that, the South Africa situation. I can see what you mean there. And as an outside observer, it did look like there was a bit manufactured. And again, if that, a bit like culture or your behaviours, if they're too manufactured and they're not real, they're probably going to get found out at some stage if they're not genuine.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen straight away. I think it snowballs a little bit. Like one thing leads to another, leads to a bigger thing. Bit by bit, it gets bigger. So I totally agree. And it's even that. Did you say punter gave that speech? Was it during the Ashes when you regained it again?
Yeah, it was Ashes 06, 07. So
at Sydney.
Well, that was in Perth when we were about to win the third test. Obviously, in Sydney.
He gave an awesome one in Sydney too, because I was 13 then that game. So I was running the drinks. I was running the drinks out that whole game. So I remember he gave an awesome speech on the last day when you guys were about to win it. And I had goosebumps all over me. I was so excited.
I get goosebumps now just thinking about it. But So
Punter was a great leader though. It wasn't like even when I assume he was, because when he was with us at the World Cup last year, just listening to him talk, and that humility definitely came out.
Yeah.
He's a very smart man. He's a very switched on man who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And you could just see the leadership that he possessed without even trying anything, just the way he went about anything. You want to follow him.
Oh, totally. He's a great mentor of mine, and it's an odd situation when you say someone younger than you by a few years is your mentor. And in fact, it's even, I think, the best. He wouldn't have a clue that he was a mentor to me. He wouldn't know, and that's the best mentorship. The moment you say to someone, you've got to mentor them and they're going to mentor you, it's not gone, but the best
it's leadership.
Exactly. The best type of mentoring is when people don't even really know what's going on, but you're just observing. And like you said, you just want to go with him. And he was very much that. And same with Steve and Tugger. And that's what I found with those guys. You just sort of observe as much as anything what they're doing, and then you go with them.
Awesome. I got one. You've been on here, mate. You've been awesome. I've loved chatting to you. I got one last question for you. If you could tell your younger self, younger Gilly, one piece of advice from where you are now, what would it be?
Two things I'll say just quickly. One, that my most favourite saying in life that I've carried around since Steve Ward let us know it in 2001 in India. It's not his quote. If you Google it, that wonderful philosopher called Anonymous has claimed it. But attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? Best quote that I can relate to. You can use that from the moment you wake up every day. You can just ask yourself, what's your attitude going to be? And if it's poor, it's going to have a ripple effect on others. So if you're in a team environment, if it's not positive, don't say it. Or if it needs to be said, if it's negative, make sure you do it in a respectful, constructive manner. But so that's my favourite there. And so I would like to have, known that all the way through. I'd advise any youngster of that. But I reckon it's a bit like the don't walk around school with a really heavy backpack full of textbooks, because it weighs you down and you're going to be worried about everything. You got to offload it and get about and empty. It's a bit like your mind. Don't carry the heavy weight around in your mind. It's like what we've spoken about all the way through, that mental sort of challenge and balance of cricket. If you're carrying it all around, and that was me in 2005, I was carrying so much in my mind that I didn't offload it to anyone or couldn't find a way to, it's going to be a handbrake. So lighten the load physically and mentally.
Awesome. Gilly, you're a legend. As I said at the start, my idol. Thank you so much for being on the show, mate. I was so pumped when you said you'd come on. So thanks for making the time, mate. Hopefully I'll see you soon, and hopefully we can do this again at some point.
Pleasure, mate. Very, very professionally done too. There's, I'm sure you've got the whole world ready for you whenever the day is that you finish cricket. But broadcasting, mate, I'm getting nervous already. There's a new generation coming.
No, not at all. Hopefully I've got a couple of years left to me. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you soon, bud.
Thank you for listening to Kicking It with Khawaja. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Stay tuned for more great guests.